Okay. Welcome to Hollywood and Sip. I am your host, Kat Smith. With me today is Doug Vermeeran, who is the filmmaker behind How Thoughts Become Things, which did it just recently release or is it upcoming?
April 27th it came out. So yeah, we've been about a month now. Well,
Ah,
2 months now, I guess. Wow, time flies.
right?
I
It's because we've all been stuck at home, so time is a little
was gonna
off
say,
kilter.
yeah, what is time anymore, right?
What
Like,
is
I don't know.
it?
Yeah, that's funny.
Well, let's ask you the hard question. How do thoughts become things?
Well, it's interesting because this has been something that I've studied for quite some time. My background, I started actually without any experience in personal development. When I was about 19, I ran into the book Think and Grow Rich. And my family was, quite frankly, involved in the poverty pattern, right? Like my father worked construction and my mom babysat kids at the home. So when I read that book, I noticed a real shift in my thinking. That was the start of it, right? Like for me. And then I decided to go out and start interviewing some of the world's top achievers. I started obviously with people that I had access to, but I ended up getting to more than 400 of some of the biggest names that are out there. And I noticed again that as I surrounded myself with higher level people, again, my thoughts expanded again. And so really, how do thoughts become things? Well, it really, I believe, starts with questioning our programming. Where did we begin, right? Like, because a lot of us, we really kind of, as we say, we're plagued with this idea of thinking small, of thinking we're not good enough, we're not big enough, we're not enough, right? We don't have enough of these answers. And so as soon as I started kind of leveling up people who believed a different thing, my programming began to change. And so as my programming changed, I began to see just greater possibilities for myself. And I think that's the first step. In fact, I love this idea of the word become, right? Because most people focus on this idea of things, right? Like
Hmm.
the monetary things or the house, the car, the relationships, even all the things that they want. But they don't understand that a prerequisite to it is to make a change, which is become. So who are we willing to change? Who are we willing to become so that we can really see something different in our lives? I think that that's a beginning foundational principle.
I think that's really important too, because that was leading up to something I was going to ask you, and that is uh, the movie and the book, The Secret. I remember for a while, what was it, maybe 15, 20 years ago-ish that was so popular,
Something like that. Yep.
something like that, yeah. And I remember thinking the people that I knew. One second.
No problem. No
What was I say? So The Secret came out about 15, 20 years ago, and what struck me first, just in the opening of your film, I felt like it was different than that. And what I'm
problem.
referring to is thinking back to that time. I remember the people I knew who were really into sharing that book with people and, just talking about it. All I saw from them was really thinking, I want a yacht. I'm going to say to
Ah,
myself every day, I want a yacht. And I remember constantly thinking, well, everybody might want a yacht, but you have to actually do something for it. And I felt like that
that was
message,
missing.
right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
well,
so,
that's a really interesting point that you have, because this is one of the things that I firmly believe that was probably left out of that conversation is what are the things to do too, because you often hear also people in personal development talk about this idea of you've got to take massive action, right? And it's not true. The truth is it's not massive action. We need to actually take deliberate action. That's what we need, right? We need to take
right.
deliberate action. That's what's going to get the results that we're wanting.
And you focus a lot on thought. It's the people who are saying so much aren't really thinking. And the people that you don't
Hmm.
hear talking are probably thinking a lot. And I think that's more of the message. It's not so much believing it into fruition, it's believing it, but having the thoughts in your mind, the steps that you're going to work on to get there. Is that correct?
Well, let's look at it this way. Okay, so the motivational speaker Jim Rohn once said this. He said that if you become a millionaire, or if you win the lottery and you want to keep it, you have to become a millionaire really quickly. So this idea of become is really what we're talking about. You see that you remember in The Secret they say that everything vibrates at different frequencies, right? And so if we want to have those things in our life, we need to learn how to elevate to those frequencies. Now here's something cool for you to think about. So when we were filming this movie, How Thoughts Become Things, I had a chance to spend quite a bit of time with some of the different speakers in the film. And one of them was Bob Proctor. And so Bob and I were chatting and we're like, well, what's this stuff that's like vibrating, right? Because we all hear about that. And what is it? Is it something on the periodic table? Like, is it elements of carbon? Is it elements of, you fill in the blank. I was never good at chemistry, so don't ask me about that. But anyway, so here's what we came up with. That the thing that's vibrating in the universe is actually different manifestations of gratitude and love. And when we have something that's not really working out and we're resisting it and it's not working good, it's because there's low gratitude and love in that. But when we're seeing things in our flow and things kind of expand naturally and they kind of dial in, it's a high manifestations of gratitude and love. So if you think about it, like if you want to expand what you have, you need to start by expanding who you are. And if you think about the universe that we all live in, ever since the Big Bang, that's been expanding, right? And so if we ever do anything that contracts to that, like that works against the universe, in other words, if we operate from a place of jealousy, comparison, hatred, criticism, even these thoughts of racism that's going on, it's all terrible stuff. But we're fighting against the entire universe when we think that way. So again, if we want to expand the other way, we got to remember that the universe is an echo chamber. So how you show up will always determine what shows up for you. If you show up again with hesitation and doubt and fear, that's what you're going to get. But if you show up with love, gratitude, power, and all of these other things, that's what's going to show up for you, right?
Stupid dog. He's a tiny forever puppy, so he thinks everybody's out to get him. I'll probably leave that bark in there because I can still hear you.
Cool.
So who are some of the experts you talk in your film about this subject? Some of them were in The Secret, I think you mentioned. So are they still in that mind frame, or is this sort of an evolution over time to a new place?
Well, here's the thing that's kind of cool about that movie, The Secret. The Secret was the beginning of a conversation, right? So I think there was so much more that we need to discuss. And even my other films, like this is my 4th movie now that we've done on this subject. So our other films also expanded upon some of the ideas that were begun there. And so I think really for me, Kate, it comes down to this. You remember in The Secret, but also elsewhere, people said thoughts become things. And they even said it dramatically, like thoughts, right? And here's the deal. My question's always been how. So this is what we're here to answer. And we're here to talk about a few things. So number one, the programming that you arrived on the planet in other words, your family, your community, the people that gave you these ideas that you believe so strongly. Well, were they right? And are those ideas that serve you? So we need to question our programming. We also need to recognize that we've got the power to expand or develop programming beyond what we're already experiencing, right? So we're going to talk about that in the film. You'll see that. We also talk about things like fear and negative thinking. And especially right now with what's going on with the coronavirus, there's a lot of people that are living in a state of fear, so to speak, and they're questioning what's my future look like, and maybe even what's my present look like. And so we're going to share with you some really cool, powerful things about fear, so that you can position yourself to be in a greater, situation of empowerment for yourself, right? And then one of the things that I also kind of like about this film that's really interesting, that changed my life. We talked about this in the beginning of this interview about, we are like the people we surround ourselves with. You've heard it said we become like the 5 people we spend the most time with. And I want to point out that that's spend, not spent, right?
Right.
So if you came from something that you don't like and you think, oh, my family, they don't get me, or I'm from a bad situation, they don't get me. The truth of the matter is you can change that. You don't have to have your past determine your destiny, right? Your future is in your hands. And I like this idea of finding a way to level up everything all the time. In fact, one of my mentors said it this way. He said, you'll never do $1 million deal at a $10 breakfast. So we don't want to hang out with the low, slow, and the no people. We want to rise to people who get our vibration, who are excited to be around us, who make us feel better about ourselves, who see the brilliance that we are and help us ignite that. That's where our greatest power is going to come. We don't want to hang around with people that have us feeling terrible about ourselves. That's no fun.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of hard. Like I've interviewed lots of people on similar subjects, all with things doing with mental health and things from our past. And because I'm a variety show, so I talk to people about many different subjects, but I have had on a lot of authors who talk about their different expertises. And one of the things that I think about whenever I'm talking to them is, I just turned 49. So I feel like I'm at that age where I've spent a lot of time working on that back history, weeding out people that are sort of negative influences and all of that. And I wish that there's some way to get younger people to start doing that work sooner. So do you think that the younger generation can get a lot out of your film as well?
Definitely they can, but here's something I want to tell you about the younger generation. I still feel like I'm part of that, is that you can't get us to do anything. Right? We've got to discover the value in that ourselves, and we got to want to. If I can be completely honest with you, I was a terrible student in school. I had terrible grades. In fact, I didn't like school so much that even when it came time for me to do my final exam for math, I chose to sleep in my car instead of go take a math test. I wasn't interested in school. But as soon as I started seeing a purpose behind it, right, now it became interesting to me. And then it became my mission. And so when I started interviewing the world's top achievers, getting to movie stars and celebrities. And these are people that I was ready to listen to. But my math teacher, not so much, right? So I think it's really important that as we're working with the youth today and people who want to learn this, we understand that everybody has, how should we say, a mission and an area of brilliance, things that they are passionate and excited about. And my mission with this film is I don't care what it is that you want, right? As long as it doesn't hurt anyone else, and it's something that you can be proud of as a legacy. If you've got something within you that you feel needs to be expressed, whether it's artistic or business or whatever it is, this film will help you get there. It will teach you how to make the thoughts into the things you want to do, the authentic part. And by the way, one thing I think is really kind of cool is we've already started working on my next movie now. I won't tell you too much about it.
Okay.
But finding that authentic part is a trick for a lot of people, because right now most of us get our idea on what we want to be by how many likes we get on Facebook, how many subscribers, how many followers, what social media tells us we should do, how it tells us we should wear, blah, 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 right? But part of that is we're getting lost because those aren't providing a true sense of validation. You might be able to make some money through some of that, sure. Some people make money by, selling to their followers, but the true sense of validation goes beyond money. Right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, and also your point isn't necessarily, this isn't all about making money or having a successful business. This is all aspects of your life, whether it's health or relationships or financial freedom, whatever
But I want to be important on this. Take the money too.
Of course, yes.
Take the money too.
I was going to point out that just then when you I'm going to point behind me, like I'm pointing to your side, and you pointed to the thoughts and the things, but your mission is kind of the how and the become is what gets you there.
That is totally brilliant. In fact, what's really funny, and I don't know, maybe your listeners can kind of see this. I've got a whiteboard. And the thing that's kind of neat about this, if we take the title, boy, hopefully you can read my writing, How Thoughts Become Things. There's an interesting lesson in this. Okay, so again, hopefully you can read what I'm talking about. Okay, so most people, and you notice I put a line down the middle, most people talk about the thoughts, right? Like positive thoughts, negative thoughts. People are worried about their fear, their doubt, their feelings of self-worth, right? So we really get hung up on that part. That's a big part of the conversation everybody's talking about. People are also talking about things, right? The things that they want, whether it's a nice house, nice car, nice blah, blah, blah. You fill in the blank, right? Good relationship, whatever it could be. And so we've put a lot of focus over here, but we don't understand that these things cannot come without that. In fact, let me shift my chair. If we look here, this side here is really about the things that we're going to have. I've just written the word have there. Okay, so we always focus on those things. Now, if you look at a lot of personal development, they often talk about the do. Here's what you got to do to get those things that you want to have. But the thing that's missing, and by the way, the do is kind of this how. So we've got that in there. That's in the film. But it's really to understand that we need to be before we can do, before we can have, right? Because you've heard the saying even that says that actions speak louder than words, right? Well, being speaks even louder than actions. And when we can learn how to be the right thing, we sometimes have an easier time doing the right thing. And certainly we then see the arrival. It comes to that what I talked about earlier. If we want to expand what we have, we've got to expand who we are. And so a lot of the movie really talks about how can we make the shift? And even that idea of, we're talking about, you want to get to those higher frequencies. How do you become, right? Like, how do you make those changes? And this is really the big reason why most people don't have what they want. It's because they're not willing to become.
It's kind of like reverse engineering.
It's 100% reverse engineering, but but
you have to have the transformation in there.
Yeah. But here's the deal: is it's not even a transformation. Is you've got to have some strong enough whys to connect these to your values, right? Like here's the deal. I'm sorry, I'll just draw another kind of cool diagram here. Okay, you see a teeter-totter, right? Okay, the teeter-totter goes up and down. Well, if a person has low values to something, it takes a lot of motivation to get them to do it, right? They're just not interested, right? But if you reverse that and something's a high value to them, something that they really, really want and that they want to do, it takes very low motivation to get them to actually do something. They'll do it almost instantly because they can see how it fits in their life. Again, it's kind of like me again in the school, going to school. Yeah, I found super low motive or value in what the teachers were telling me at school. It just wasn't interesting to me. So it required high motivation for them to get me to do anything. And in fact, I didn't do anything, right? Like I wasn't interested. So we've got to understand that for ourselves to really find the true essence of becoming, to be willing to make a change, because change is hard. It's not easy, right? If you think about even a relationship, right? Like to have a good relationship with a significant other or spouse, unless you value that, it's not easy, right? And so
Yeah.
you've got to decide that that's really what you want. When you decide that that's what you want and you're committed to it, well, the commitments will allow you to set boundaries around what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. And heaven knows there's many people who just don't have strong boundaries now. And so that's why I think they struggle with a lot of things.
Yeah. And I was thinking that, I don't know which part of are you in California? Are you somewhere else?
I'm actually in Canada
You're in
today.
Canada. Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Well, that's wonderful, eh? Um,
it is.
um, well, I was thinking that your book came out, it's less than a month after our shelter in place. And I
My
know
question is which book? Because I've got 12 out. But if you're talking the movie, yeah,
yes,
April
this one, the
24th.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it came out just a few weeks after California shelter in place. And I know the rest of the nation kind of came in at different points.
Yeah.
But do you think that your movie maybe is now more beneficial than it would have been, say, if you had released it just 6 months earlier?
It's quite possible. It's hard to say, but one thing I will tell you is I've been very pleased by the emails and things that we're getting from people. Like I've got different people who are talking about, sort of what they've gotten from the film and so forth. And one of my favorite emails actually that I received was from a young man who was about 11 years old, a kid, and he said, I loved in the film how you guys specifically spoke about fear, and then he said that fear really has a lot to do with well, let me put it this way. He said that right now he's experiencing a lot of fear. He's wondering, what am I going to do? First of all, he was bullied at school, so he would find new ways to get home. That was freaky to him. He was wondering, how am I going to do well in school? What am I going to do with my future? And then here's the big kicker. Speaking of COVID, he said, and now I'm at home and I see all the adults are afraid. And he said, no one's having a conversation with the kids. They're just really focused on what adults are feeling, economically and, everything else. And so he goes, us kids, no one's talked to us yet about this. I'm terrified. And he says, but when I saw the film, I began to understand what fear is and why others are experiencing it, why I'm experiencing it, and some strategies of how I can overcome. So I thought that this was, really a powerful message that we had. And the film is just so powerful. So I hope everyone will get a chance to see it.
Yeah. Can we shift focus for just a quick second? And how did you get into filmmaking? I know you're an author too, so I don't know which came first, chicken or the egg, but.
Oh yeah, definitely the chicken in this case, the film, right? Okay,
Yeah.
now this is gonna sound kind of funny. So, like I said, I had no idea about personal development. I really was not aware of that. It wasn't something on my radar at all. But when I was a young kid, movies like Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Ghostbusters and Back to the Future and all these amazing films came out. So I was always interested in films from a young age. And I was able to be an extra on a movie when I was about, must have been the second or third grade, something like that. And it got me really excited about making movies. Not so much to watch the movies, but this is how they're built behind the scenes, right? This is
Right.
neat. And so my grandpa gave me an old video camera and I started making movies even when I was a kid. In fact, part of what I did during school is I would skip class and I would sign out the library's camcorder. I'd go do my own thing. And then when I started going to school, I studied screenwriting and film production. And it was then that, I kind of fell into personal development a little bit. And the interesting thing about my first movie, which came out in 2008, it's called The Opus, and it features most of the cast from The Secret and that kind of thing. But when I first wanted to do it, it was interesting because not a lot of people thought you could make a movie like this, right? Like, what is it, a how-to movie? Is it a documentary? Like, where do these movies kind of fit, right? And then thank goodness for films like What the Bleep and The Secret and others, The Moses Code and others that came out, really great movies. And they kind of opened the door for me because people now understood this was a viable way to share this information. So we did our first films, but funny enough, just speaking about movies that we're getting into that, I've also done stunt work in film and TV, and I've also done, I've done TV pilots. In fact, I've got a deal right now. I'm executive producer on 2 other films coming up that are not personal development related. This is still my passion. I still go around the world. I speak, I write books, and I do this, but because of what I've created in my life, I can kind of choose what I want to do. So I still really enjoy the creative aspect of creating film. And I have to admit, like, it's interesting because film is always created by a collaboration of people, right? It's never an individual. And so I really enjoy that sort of connecting with other people who have that same creative vibe like I do. It energizes me. And so I'm really grateful for that.
You were just talking about how the films like The Secret and your
Mhm.
film and some others, that they are kind of a different genre, but also they're kind of their own moving thing in that, like, this stands alone as a movie. But I wanted to point out that I was checking out your website and I noticed that you also have somewhat of a program that goes with it, because you can also,
Yeah.
if you purchase the film, then you can have an audio workshop and a workbook and I think even another book. So
Yeah, we've kind of built it to support people. One of the I guess things, even with my previous films, I felt this way, that the content and the information is wonderful, but so often when people either get a book or watch a film, they're like, I feel good about that, and then they put it aside and do nothing. And we did not want to have that happen this time. The information is very powerful, practical, and easy to implement. So we decided to create a workbook that goes along with the film. So when a person gets the film, they get the workbook. They also get, there's a really cool book of powerful quotes. There's audio programs with it, etc. Then there's also higher levels depending on how deep a person wants to go. In fact, one of those levels we've actually, if a person would like to, we've included some of the private group coaching that I do, some of those sessions. We've also included all 3 of my previous movies and a variety of other things. In fact, there's a program we just put out based on my interviews with top achievers called Success in 7 Days. And it is life-changing. It literally, in 7 days, your life will be like, aha, now you know kind of what to do. And we include that in there too, which I think is really kind of a neat thing because, again, we've seen a lot of shifts that people have been able to make. And like I said, in literally record time, which is cool, especially in COVID right now, right? Like, people are looking for an answer. So we've been so grateful that these principles are doing just that for people.
yeah, I think this is a time where people are stuck at home, and there's half of them that are in the, ugh, this is terrible, and then there's this other half of people who are like waking up thinking, okay, you know what, maybe this is my time to figure out what I'm here for. And so I think things like this are really helpful to those who are in that what do I do next phase.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's important. And here's the thing that I think is really kind of interesting about COVID. You can look at this as the biggest challenge or tragedy that you faced in your entire life. And for some people, that could be true. But I also think for many, it is an amazing opportunity to reset and restart and reevaluate. And when we find, again, going back to this idea of to become, when we can start to see clearly how our values are influencing us. And if you think about it, up until now, we've been very influenced by everything that's so going on. We're part of the commotion of it. But now we've been able to pause so we can actually kind of decide what it is we really want. And I think a lot of people have discovered in this moment that there's been a lot of, how should we say, filler or fluff that's been part of their life that hasn't served them. And so now is a great time to really kind of reinvent yourself to be the person you really want to be and the brilliance that you were meant to be.
And before I let you go, we've talked about the 3 other films a couple times, but we haven't listed what they are. 2-part question: what are they? And 2, are they meant to be in order, or do they each have their own subject matter that you can just jump into anytime you want?
I think that they can be watched in any sequence and order that you want. I personally think that if I was to do it again, this would have been the first one, right? So I don't know if there's an order, but what I have found is as people have watched them, that I think it's one of those things. Like, I encourage you to watch it regularly because you get different things based on the experiences you're in at different points in your life. So the first one was called The Opus, and it really focuses on how do you go from the vision of what you want to turning it into a plan and ultimately performance in your life. So the real true way that top achievers do set and achieve goals. And as I mentioned, it's got some of the biggest names, Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen, Joe Vitale, John DeMartini, Morris Goodman. You remember the guy who crashed his airplane, and Marcy Shimoff, and so many great people in that film. The second, and by the way, it has a story that goes through it, so it's really quite interesting that way, and it's won several awards. Random House also translated it into 23 languages as a book. The second one I did was called The Gratitude Experiment. And one of the things that I learned as I interviewed the top achievers was that gratitude is really an important component of success, but very few success books talk about it. So this unfolds what true gratitude does and what it really is and how you can really practice it. The third one, to be honest, is kind of a lot more about money, and it's called The Treasure Map. And it deals, first of all, with the mindset that's required to create abundance, but then some very practical strategies that anyone can do every single day and things that will start making you financially free. And then, of course, now here we are with How Thoughts Become Things. And you can get them all really actually right now at the website, howthoughtsbecomethings.com. And for a limited time, we've got the other movies in the mix too, so you can see them all, which is really very cool.
Well, I think it's kind of cool how you just laid that out too. I think you maybe wish that had been your first movie, but I think instead of being the first one you created, because you probably needed all of that knowledge to get to this one, it
Could be.
seems to me like this one is the one to watch first because the others are the how and the become.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting as well, too, a question that a lot of people ask me is, which is my favorite movie? The next one.
Exactly.
Because the truth is quite frankly, I know I say this would have been the good first one, but you're right. I wouldn't have been able to create what I have envisioned had I not had the previous films. In fact, just to be honest with you, I mean, like with anything, like if you think maybe the first time one of your listeners, maybe first time they wrote a book or the first time they rode a bicycle or the first time that they played guitar, you made mistakes. Well, my first movie, I made some mistakes. I mean, the movie's great, but looking back at it, there's some things that, yeah, I probably fixed. But also there was one mistake that I made that cost me about 50 grand to fix. Oh. So we don't make mistakes like that anymore, but that's part of life, right? We make mistakes so that we can learn and do better on the next time that we have that opportunity.
Well, you've been listening to Hollywood and Sip. I'm still your host, Kat Smith, and I've been talking to Doug Vermeeran. I butchered your name, didn't I? Vermeeran.
That's great. Vermeeren. That's perfect.
Vermeeran. Okay. Yeah, and he's the filmmaker. Sorry, what?
Just like the Dutch painter who did Girl with the Pearl Earring. That's actually my great-great-grandfather.
Oh, wow. That's very cool in itself. Maybe there's a documentary in the works.
You never know. You never know.
So he's the filmmaker behind How Thoughts Become Things. And you gave out the website. Do you have social media? Do you have other things? And is the film available anywhere else also?
It will probably be. We've had, believe it or not, a ton of requests for DVDs. And I didn't even think people had DVD players anymore, but okay. So we may be doing that soon. There's also a book that's going to be coming out later this year. But certainly if you want to follow me, I've got lots of great free resources and other things online. You can find me at either douglasvermeeran.com or go to YouTube, type in Douglas Vermeeran, or on Instagram, Douglas Vermeeran.
I should have recorded that and played it back 100 times at the beginning, and then I would have nailed your name. Vermeeran. There we go. Thank you so much for chatting today. It was really enlightening.
Thank you. I look forward to chatting again.
Okay, bye. And then this will air on Tuesday on KSVY, and then after it airs on the radio, I'll load it to YouTube, and it'll be shareable that way.
Perfect. Let me know if you also want any of the other speakers from the film. I'm happy to try and get you some of those people, some pretty big names there. So.
Oh yeah, awesome. Just get my email from your publicist, and yeah, that would be great.
Let me slide my email in the chat right now, so you can steal it.
There's the chat. There it is.
Right. There we go.
Oh, perfect. I forgot we had a chat. Here, I can give you mine right now too.
Oh, good. Let's do it. I'll actually snap a shot.
Did it go? It went. There we go. Perfect.
Easy. Perfect. Yeah, so I'll do a quick message and to the rest of the speakers. And some of them are just awesome and amazing. You'd love to have them on, I'm sure.
Awesome. Yeah.
We'll promote as well. So.
Great. Thank you so much. Good luck with the film.
Awesome. You take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Over a decade ago, you were told about a secret. This secret revealed one of the most powerful laws in the universe. And a window was opened for you to see endless possibilities. It expanded your views of who you are and what you could become. You saw before you incredible possibilities for abundance and wealth. You saw the key to improving relationships and stronger connections with those you love. You saw the path to recapture your health in miraculous ways and achieve the healthier lifestyle that you've always wanted. Perhaps most important, you saw that through this secret, you could gain a greater connection with yourself, your self-worth, and insights into how you could have everything that you want and desire. This secret was based on your thoughts and the power of your frequencies and feelings. Are you ready for the next step to be revealed?
Thinking is, in my opinion, the highest function that we're capable of. The problem is most people do not think. Although it's the highest function we're capable of, very few people do it.
Well, thought is really the creative force of our mind. When our mind, who is like the energy of the universe.
We have over 50,000 thoughts that percolate up from our subconscious minds based on the patterns that are the trillions of neural connections. Every book we've read, every movie we've seen, every interaction we've had, every experience that we've had, every idea, emotion, sensation that has been orchestrated and organized in our brain, specifically our subconscious brain and our memory center, is percolating up these unimaginable thoughts.
We live in an optical illusion. You don't see what is real, you see what you believe. What you're seeing is filtered through the belief system in your mind. It's filtered through your thoughts. If you happen to think that the world is a messy, desperate, despondent place, you will look into the world and you will find evidence to match your belief. You'll have your reality match your mindset.
If we look around us, pretty much everybody is on automatic pilot most of the time, unless you are a very good control of yourself, unless you are very intentional.
It's not just thoughts become things, it's how thoughts become things. And the how, well, that's the process. And become, well, those are the changes that you're going to be able to make.
Because as you show up powerfully in that way of being, the world will respond to you. You cannot be the old way and have the world respond differently to you. So the very first thing you have to know is, who am I in this?
And if you start to unwind where those thoughts came from and how they were truly imprinted in your subconscious mind, now all of a sudden you learn how to start controlling your thoughts and creating belief structures that are your own, that weren't just given to you, but that you're actually creating from inception. And that's how we start creating more and more of our own true success as we wake ourselves up to what we really want as we get later in life.
In other words, reality is different for every human being because reality is based on what we perceive, that we've heard secondhand from our family, that we've learned from our environment, and what it means to us.
What you believe to be true is true for you, but it's not necessarily based on reality.
Our thoughts become things, and our innermost dominant thought becomes our outermost tangible reality. And whatever you think about most, you bring about most in life.
Are you ready for the next step to be revealed?